It's Sunday morning and someone wakes up with that strange feeling in their chest. The house is quiet. The light enters through the window unhurriedly, but something is not right. It's not sadness, it's not anger. It's as if their whole life is a movie they're watching but never chose to see. The job that came along, the relationship that just happened, the dreams that didn't work out. Each piece of the puzzle seems to have fallen into place on its own, as if someone has been living on autopilot for so long that they've forgotten where the steering wheel is. This person gets up, brushes their teeth looking at the mirror without really recognizing themselves, makes coffee the same way they always do, and sits in the same chair they always sit in. The routine is there, neat, predictable, safe. But beneath this apparent normality, there is a question that won't go away. How did I end up here? And even more frightening, when did I stop deciding and just start reacting? There is a lie we tell ourselves every day. A lie so subtle and so constant that we no longer even notice it. It is the lie that we are spectators of our own lives, that things happen to us, that we have no choice, that we are victims of circumstances, hostages of time, prisoners of a destiny that someone wrote without consulting us. We live repeating phrases like mantras. That's life. There's no way around it. Everyone goes through this. It's part of the game. But what if this whole narrative of powerlessness were just a sophisticated way of avoiding responsibility? What if the feeling of being trapped were actually the result of not wanting to see the bars we built ourselves? What if the worst prison wasn't made of iron, but of well-crafted excuses? Jean-Paul Sartre looked at the modern void and said something no one wanted to hear. You are not a victim. You are the author. And the script of your life is being written by you every second, even when, especially when, you pretend it isn't. For him, this was the tragedy and glory of the human condition. To be condemned to freedom in a world where it is much more comfortable to believe that we have no choice. Today we are going to dissect the most comfortable lie of human existence. We are going to understand why it is easier to say I have no choice than to admit that we choose not to choose. And maybe in the end, you will discover that the freedom you have been searching for was there all along, waiting for you to stop pretending it doesn't exist. There's a specific moment in everyone's life when the mask comes off. It could be on any given Monday, in the middle of a meaningless meeting, or on a Friday night, when you realize you're hanging out with people you don't like, going somewhere you don't want to go. That's when that uncomfortable question hits you. How did I end up here? The automatic response is always the same. I had no choice. I needed the job. It was all I could do at the time. Things just happened. As if life were a river and you were just a leaf carried away by the current. As if every important decision in your existence had been made by forces greater than yourself, by external pressures, by anything but you. Sartre would look at this explanation and laugh, not in mockery but in recognition, because he knew this dance very well, this perfect choreography of self-deception, this refined art of turning choices into destiny. Man is condemned to be free, he said, and condemned here is not poetic exaggeration. It is an accurate diagnosis of a condition we prefer to ignore. Imagine yourself at 20, full of plans and possibilities. The whole world seemed open, like a blank map waiting to be filled in. Now think of every fork in the road since then. College or work, this person or that person, this city or another, this job or that job. At every crossroads you had options. Maybe not the ones you wanted, but you had them. And you chose. You always chose. Even when you chose to let someone else choose for you, you were choosing. But recognizing this is terrifying. Because if you chose to get where you are, that means you can also choose to leave. And choosing to leave means taking risks. It means trading known security for unknown uncertainty. It means stopping blaming circumstances and starting to take responsibility for the consequences. And that for most people is too scary to consider. Think about the last time you said, I can't do that. Stop for a second and be honest. Could you really not do it? Or did you not want to deal with the consequences? When you say I don't have time, are you talking about a law of physics or a priority you've chosen? When you say I'm not like that, are you describing an essence carved in stone or a habit you cultivate every day? There is a stark difference between real limitations and existential excuses. Real limitations are few resources, little time, little energy. Existential excuses are, I'm not the type of person who I never succeed at. Everyone in my family is like that. The first category you can get around. Overcome, negotiate. The second category you feed, cultivate, use as a comfortable bed to lay down responsibility. The truth is that you're choosing all the time. Even when you choose not to choose, you're choosing. When you put your life on autopilot, you are choosing autopilot. When you repeat the same routine for 5 years, you are choosing to repeat. When you stay in that job that suffocates you, in that relationship that diminishes you, in that city that imprisons you, you are choosing to stay. And more importantly, you are choosing for the reasons you chose. And then comes the question no one wants to ask. Why? Why do we choose prison? Why do we opt for paralysis? Why do we prefer constant complaining to real change? Sartre had an answer for that, and it's not a comforting one. We choose prison because freedom is scary. We choose paralysis because action requires courage. We choose complaining because taking responsibility hurts. There is a perverse comfort in being a victim. The victim has perfect alibis for every failure. The victim can point outside and say, "It wasn't my fault." The victim gains compassion, understanding, absolution. The protagonist, on the other hand, has to explain every bad choice, every missed opportunity, every path that didn't work out. The protagonist has no one to pass the buck to. But here is the cruel paradox of human existence. You are already answering for your life, even if you pretend you are not. Your omission is an answer. Your passivity is an action. Your denial of choice is itself a choice. You are the author of your story, even when you pretend you are just a secondary character in it. The difference is that by pretending, you write a story you don't want to read. Sartre called this bad faith, this human capacity to lie to oneself, to deny one's own freedom in order to escape the anguish of having to decide. It's like an actor who has played a role for so long that he has forgotten he is on stage. He lives the character with such conviction that he believes he is real. But unlike the actor, you have no director, no script, no audience that will leave when the curtain falls. What you have is much scarier and much more powerful. The terrifying and liberating responsibility of inventing your own story every day you wake up. And maybe it's time to stop pretending you lost your pen. There is an invisible mirror that follows you everywhere. It's not on the walls of your house or in the bathroom at work. It's in the eyes of every person who crosses your path. And in that distorted mirror, you can never see who you really are. You can only see who you should be, who they expect you to be, who you're afraid of not being. The morning begins and you're already getting ready for the show. You choose your clothes thinking about what others will think. You post a photo thinking about the likes. You reply to WhatsApp messages thinking about the right tone. Every gesture is calculated, every word is measured, every silence is strategic. You live as if you were being filmed 24 hours a day by an invisible audience that never stops judging you. Sartre knew that we are not alone in the world, and that is not a blessing, it is a curse in disguise. Hell is other people, he wrote, but not because people are evil. Hell is in the way we lose ourselves trying to exist in the reflection of others' eyes, how we become objects in the perception of others, ceasing to be subjects of our own experience. Think about the last time you remained silent in a conversation, even though you had something important to say. Why did you remain silent? Fear of being misunderstood, of causing discomfort, of not being accepted. How many genuine opinions have you swallowed to keep the peace? How many times have you pretended to agree so as not to be excluded from the group? How many times have you smiled when you wanted to cry, spoken when you wanted to be silent, appeared strong when you felt fragile? The most sophisticated prison has no iron bars. It has bars made of expectations. You lock yourself in a cell built with what you believe others expect of you. And the cruelest thing is that often these expectations don't even exist. They are ghosts created by your own unhealthy need for approval. You live to please people who may not even be paying attention. This has been happening since childhood. You learn early on that there is a version of yourself that is accepted and another that is rejected. The child who behaves well receives affection. The one who makes a mess is scolded. Little by little, you bury parts of yourself that don't fit the mold. You hide your anger, disguise your sadness, pretend to be interested in things that bore you, smile when you want to scream. The worst part is not being judged. The worst part is when you internalize these judgments so much that you can no longer distinguish your voice from the voices of others inside your head. You wake up in the morning and no longer know if that worry is yours or an echo of criticism you heard years ago. You make decisions and can no longer tell if you are following your desires or running away from the disapproval of others. Sartre described this as objectification, the moment when you cease to be a free consciousness and become something perceived, interpreted, shaped by a gaze that is not your own. You reduce yourself to an image, and you spend your whole life trying to control that image, forgetting that behind it there is a real person with real desires, real fears, real dreams. Observe how this works in your daily life. You're at a party and someone tells a joke that you don't find funny, but you laugh anyway. You're in a group that criticizes someone and you agree, even though you don't know the person. You post something on social media and keep checking the reactions, as if your self-esteem depended on numbers on a screen. Every time you act like this, you are giving up a piece of your autonomy in exchange for temporary acceptance. There is a silent violence in living for others. It is not the violence of screams or blows. It is the violence of self-annihilation. It is dying a little every day you wake up and decide to be who others expect you to be instead of discovering who you could be. It is the violence of reaching 40 and realizing that you have spent your entire life playing a role written by someone else. If you've come this far, perhaps it's because you recognize this pain. The pain of living like a tired actor in a theater that never closes. Leave a comment. When was the last time you did something just because you wanted to, without worrying about what others would think? Because this question is harder to answer than it seems. What Sartre realized is that this dependence on the gaze of others is not just individual neurosis. It is a silent epidemic, a collective form of existential cowardice. Each person pretending to be someone else to please other people who are also pretending. It is a circular theater where everyone is an actor and no one is a real audience. You become hostage to an image you have constructed so carefully that you are now afraid to dismantle it. What if people find out who you really are? What if they don't like you? What if they reject you? What if they are disappointed? These questions paralyze you, trap you, turn you into a plastic version of yourself. But here's the bitter irony. While you kill yourself to be accepted, you are rejecting yourself. While seeking unconditional love in others, you deny that love to those who need it most. While you fear loneliness, you are creating the deepest loneliness that exists, that of being disconnected from yourself. And the more you pretend to be someone you are not, the more alone you feel, even when surrounded by people. And the most tragic thing is that this prison has an obvious way out that almost no one has the courage to use. There comes a time when the masks begin to weigh heavily. It is not a dramatic moment. It is not an explicit crisis. It is something more subtle and more devastating. It is as if you wake up one day and realize that your own skin no longer fits, that the character you have so carefully constructed over the years has become a garment that is too tight, that suffocates, that hurts, that does not let you breathe properly. Sartre called this existential nausea. It's not physical nausea, it's nausea of the soul. It's when you look at your own life and everything seems artificial, forced, without substance. The conversations you repeat, the smiles you give, the goals you pursue. Everything loses its color, its flavor, its reason for being. It's as if someone took you out of the movie of your own life and forced you to watch from the outside, realizing how everything is just a performance. This feeling usually comes at the most mundane moments. You're brushing your teeth and suddenly you ask yourself, why am I doing this? Not in the practical sense of hygiene, but in a deeper sense. Why this routine? Why this life? Why these commitments? Why these people? Why this version of me? And the answer that comes is a deafening silence. Existential nausea chooses no time or place to strike. It can be in the middle of an important meeting when you suddenly realize that you are pretending to care about issues you consider irrelevant. It can be during a family dinner when you realize you are playing the role of the obedient child, the perfect partner, the understanding friend. It can be at a party surrounded by people when you realize you are smiling out of obligation and saying empty words just to fill the silence. The world keeps spinning around you, but you feel like an alien observing a strange species. People laugh and you don't understand why. They worry and you can't care. They make plans and you feel like it's all an absurd theater where everyone has forgotten their acting. Social life becomes an incomprehensible noise, a cacophony of needs that no longer make sense. That's when Sartre shows you something scary. Maybe you were never real. Maybe all that identity you defended tooth and nail is just a poorly made collage of other people's expectations, old fears, and momentary conveniences. Maybe the person you think you are is just a construct, a character you've played for so long that you've confused it with reality. Existential nausea is not clinical depression, although it may seem like it. It is more radical than that. It is the collapse of the illusion that your life has a ready-made meaning, a given purpose, a clear direction. It is the brutal realization that you invented everything. Your ambitions, your values, your identities. And now the invention no longer convinces even you. You find yourself questioning things that were once obvious. Why work to buy things that don't bring real happiness? Why maintain relationships that drain your energy? Why pursue goals that other people have defined as important? Why pretend that everything is fine when nothing makes sense? Each question is a crack in the facade you've built. And when the cracks come together, the facade collapses. There is something almost physical about this experience. It's as if you've been wearing foggy glasses your whole life and suddenly someone cleans them. Everything becomes too clear, too raw, too real. The illusions that once served as anesthetics cease to have any effect. You see your life as it really is. A series of commitments made without deep reflection. A sequence of roles played without real conviction. The most disturbing thing is that this nausea has no easy cure. There's no point in traveling to forget, because you take the emptiness with you. There's no point in changing jobs because the problem isn't at work. There's no point in ending relationships because the issue isn't with other people. There's no point in buying new things because no object can fill the existential void. The problem lies in the way you have been living, like a tired actor playing a role you did not consciously choose. But Sartre had a strange view of this experience. For him, nausea was not an illness to be cured. It was a symptom of health. It was a sign that your consciousness was finally waking up from the collective dream. It was proof that you were beginning to see through the illusions that keep most people anesthetized. Nausea is the price of lucidity. It's what happens when you stop accepting ready-made answers and start asking real questions. It's uncomfortable because the truth usually is, but it's also liberating, because it's the first step towards stopping living on autopilot and starting to make conscious choices. It's the moment when you stop being a spectator of your own life and assume that you can be the director. When everything loses its apparent meaning, when certainties dissolve, when you find yourself naked before the mirror of existence, something unexpected emerges. A blank page, an empty space where you can, for the first time, write something true, something that is genuinely yours. And maybe that's exactly where real life finally begins. And then comes the moment you most feared and most desired. The moment when all excuses run out, all masks fall, all refuges collapse. You are alone before the most honest mirror there is, the awareness that you have always been free. Free to choose, free to change, free to be. And this freedom is not a gift wrapped with a bow. It is a sentence from which there is no appeal. Sartre offers you no comfort. He offers you something much more valuable and much more frightening. The naked truth. You are condemned to be free. Condemned because you did not ask to be born. Condemned because you did not choose to exist. But once here, once conscious, once awake, there is no escaping the responsibility of deciding who you will be with every breath you take. Sartre's freedom is not the romantic freedom of the movies. It is not the freedom to do whatever you want without consequences. It is the terrible and magnificent freedom to be completely responsible for your choices, even when those choices are limited, even when the options are bad, even when the whole world seems to be conspiring against you. You may be born poor, but you decide how to react to poverty. You may suffer losses, but you decide how to process the pain. You may face injustice, but you decide how to respond to injustice. You may carry trauma, but you decide whether to let it define you or use the scar as a map to new territory. No one can take that away from you. Not the government, not your family, not society, not God. That is your non-transferable share of power. And that is exactly where the terror lies. Because if you are free to choose, then there is no excuse for the life you are living. There is no alibi for the dreams you have abandoned. There is no justification for the cowardice you cultivate. You are where you are because you chose to be there. And if you chose to be there, you can choose to leave. But freedom also carries a bright promise. If you built the prison, you have the key. If you wrote the script so far, you can rewrite the next chapters. If you invented the version of yourself that you can no longer stand, you can invent a new one. There is no law of nature that forces you to continue being who you were yesterday. The anguish you feel in the face of this total responsibility is not weakness. It is lucidity. It is the price of being truly alive. It is the cost of leaving the collective dream and taking ownership of your own existence. Because that is what living is. Inventing yourself every day, even without a manual, even without guarantees, even without an audience. Look at your life right now. Every relationship you have, every job you do, every word you speak, every silence you choose. All of this is you defining yourself, creating yourself, becoming yourself. There is no previous essence waiting to be discovered. There is only you, deciding who you will be in the next minute, in the next conversation, in the next choice. And if that scares you, it's because you finally understand. You are not a finished product. You are not a victim of circumstances. You are not a character in a script written by others. You are a project under construction, a draft that can be rewritten, a story that is being told right now, at this very moment, by your decisions. The question that remains is not whether you are free. You are. The question is what you will do with that freedom. Will you continue to pretend it doesn't exist? Will you continue to blame the world for the life you've built? Will you remain a prisoner in a cell whose door has always been open? Or will you have the courage to leave? The courage to take responsibility for your life? The courage to stop hiding behind excuses and start making real decisions? The courage to be truly, freely, authentically yourself? Sartre knew that most people would choose prison, because prison is safe. Because in prison you don't have to decide what to do with each new day. Because in prison there is always someone to blame when things go wrong. But if you've made it this far, maybe you're different. Maybe you have the rare courage to look into the abyss of freedom and not look away. Perhaps you have the strength to accept that your life is your work, your creation, your responsibility. Perhaps you're ready to stop being a spectator and take the wheel. The freedom Sartre offers does not come with a guarantee of happiness. It comes with something much more valuable, the possibility of an authentic life. A life that is yours, A life that you can look back on and say, this was mine. Every mistake, every right decision, every courageous choice, every moment of cowardice, all of it was my creation. Because in the end, when everything is quiet, when all the outside voices fall silent, when you are alone with your conscience, only one question will remain. Did you live the life you chose or just the life that happened to you? And that's when Sartre whispers his final truth. You always had the answer. What was the first thing you did after discovering that you had more power over your life than you imagined? Write it in the comments. If you've made it this far, you've already taken a step beyond most people. You watch the videos. You reflect on each idea. Now the question is, how far do you want to go with this? If you want to take the next step and truly apply this knowledge to your life, the codes of the White Rabbit are ready for you. The link is in the pinned comment. Remember, success is a decision. The choice is yours. Count on me and follow the White Rabbit.